Hey, my name's James Nicholson. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I've got a slightly different angle on the camera at this time because there's a lot I need to go through. There's an update with the Leasehold Reform Act. This video might be a longer one. There's some changes coming through. We've got some dates coming through now, which is obviously great as well, if that's what you want to know. Because let's face it, we've been talking about the Leasehold Reform Act for 2 years on this channel. In fact, when I launched the channel, it was the original most popular content. Since then, it's been taken over by the Renters' Rights Bill. But every single day, if you look at the comments on the channel, you guys are asking what's happening with the Leasehold Reform Act. Well, the government's done an update. We've done a lot of research on this. This has taken some time to collate all this information and get it right. I will need to look down on some notes. And before we jump into this, if you're new around here, look, let's just get to 50,000 subscribers. We're a smidge away. How can we do that? Click on that subscribe, click on that bell notification, and by subscribing, you'll get all the new updates on leasehold reform, renters' rights, interest rates, house prices, and much, much more. And this video, I think, is really important, more than any I've done for a while. So could you do me a favour, smash like, and then share this video? I'm sure you know someone that has a leasehold property that needs to know what's going on. So let's get to it. So the Leasehold Reform Act went through as the Tories, the Conservatives, left power, and they got it snuck through just in time. And since then, not much has happened. But I'm going to give you some updates on what actually has been implemented, what we're expecting, and what we're expecting this year. There's some updates coming this year, which is good. So, what the key provisions of the Leasehold Reform Act were to make it first and foremost cheaper, easier, and basically much smoother to do lease extensions and just make them more affordable and fairer. Also, you've got the option to buy the freehold, making that easier as well. And one of the big things that they wanted to get rid of, which I know frustrated a lot of people, is something called marriage value. Marriage value is when your lease drops below 80 years, your value of your property drops significantly. So let's just say your property was worth £100,000, and then with a low lease, less than 80 years, it dropped to £50,000. If you extended the lease, it would be worth £100,000 again. So in order to extend the lease, the formula for that is to work out what would the increased value be. The increased value in that scenario would be 50 grand. 50 grand extra, right? So the cost of extending would be 25. Now, if you own a property in Doncaster, like I do, this might not be a big deal. If you own one in London or the southeast, this is a big deal. I had a short lease property. It cost me 15 grand roughly to extend that a year or so ago. And without extending, it's hard to get mortgages and all sorts of stuff like that. So that's part of it. The next part of it was to ban new leasehold properties. So when they build new flats or when they build new houses, to ban leases on those, particularly houses. That was important to do that. And so that was one of the things they were doing there. The next thing was to get transparency on service charges. Those of you that have leasehold properties know service charges are a pain in the butt. I've got leasehold property and I've got somewhere the service charge is 50 quid a month, and others, a very similar property in the same town, where it's £200, and there's no real rhyme or reason for that. So the Leasehold Reform Act said, look, let's give more transparency on that. What is the money being spent on? Can people argue on buildings insurance? I'm actually doing that right now because I've got a property that you've seen on the channel, if you've been here a while, that when I turned it from a studio to a one bed, in that one, the service charge is 200 quid. I own one in the next block, and the service charge is basically zero. You just top it up when it's needed. And so that one works quite well. And the insurance on one, which is identical blocks, one of them's 3 grand, one of them's 2 grand. So we're going to them now saying, why are we paying £1,000 extra when the identical property next door is getting one for £2,000. So transparency on service charges will be good. You'll be able to ask those sorts of questions. Fairer disputes and redress. If you have a dispute with the freeholder or the management company, you're going to have better options to get that sorted. That's one of the things. Timely information. That's what we need when we're selling a property. Getting details on the freehold, the leasehold, all of this stuff to solicitors. It's slow at the moment, and that can really slow your transaction down. So that's got to get sorted as well. So what have they implemented so far? So the Leasehold Reform Act came law just as the Conservatives left. And the first thing that they've got rid of is making you wait 2 years to extend the lease if you buy a short lease property. So what does that mean? That means that, let's say you bought a property off Rightmove and it's got 70 years lease left. Then you would have to wait for some reason 2 years to be able to extend the lease. Now that could be a problem getting a mortgage, and you could have all sorts of problems with that. That's abolished. I don't think freeholders had a massive problem with that being abolished, or leaseholders. Where it could be a little bit difficult is, let's just say you had a property with 81 years left. You bought it with 81 and you couldn't extend. Then it would drop below the marriage value at 80, wouldn't it? So that probably doesn't happen very often, but it could, and that's not great. So that's important. They've expanded the right to manage, so giving people more options on the right to manage the property. The one, what I'm talking about, where I'm paying £3,000 in that block, I'm talking with the leaseholders at the moment. We're going to have a meeting in the next few weeks, and we're going to see if we want to manage it ourselves. Some places that works very well. Some places it doesn't. One of the leaseholders there, he has another property. He has one where it's a bit difficult. I have one where it's a bit difficult in Hastings. All the Dorking ones, they work fine. So you never know which is going to work, but you've got more options on right to manage as well. That's implemented. A ground rent ban was already implemented in 2022 in the Ground Rent Act. Just want to be clear on that, because lots of people ask me about ground rent. This is when you renew the lease. So the one that I renewed, where I talked about just now, where I renewed and paid 15 grand roughly to renew that lease, that doesn't have ground rent anymore. So when you renew the lease, the ground rent is abolished. Next, they've already implemented insurance commissions transparency. So what happens, which is not great, I didn't even know this happened prior, but now I do. A lot of management companies get massive commissions from insurance companies to go with them. That isn't fair, because that means they're going to pick the best one that gives them the best commission, doesn't it? And so that is abolished, and you can challenge that and find out, are they getting commissions? If you've got a management company, get the other leaseholders together, give them a bit of a scare and ask them, look, are you getting commissions? Because you shouldn't be. Service charge fee consultation. You can now challenge the service charge, ask for billing, and stuff like that as well. So that's important. And that's what's been implemented so far. Next, this is the new stuff that you want, right? I know you want this new stuff. And this is what we've been researching for a few days. It's not easy to find this stuff online. It's crazy. Not many people have reported on this. So if you got this far, do give me a like, do give me a share, and do subscribe, because I really want to get 50,000 subscribers this week, and I'm literally that close. So this is the new stuff. The new stuff is that they're going to have a new bill. Maybe that's not great. It's going to be called the Leasehold and Commonhold Reform Bill. That was always what Labour were going to call it. They changed. I think it was called the Renters' Right Act, and now it's the Renters' Right Bill. They changed the name of that one. They didn't want the Conservative stuff all over it. They wanted it as their own. So they're going to give us the draft of that this year, which is good, because we've waited a year and nothing's happened. And now we've only got to wait a couple more months. So we know we're getting something new. We're going to get the draft. That's important, so we can see what is in there. So what we're expecting to be in there, and what they've talked about, is more extensive rights to extend leases, buy the freeholds, or take over management of the properties. So that's what they're saying, is by the end of this year, you're going to get more clarity, which is what we need, on the extension of lease, the cost of extensions, the marriage value going. That's good, and that's a big win. And so that's a big thing here. Reinvigorating common hold they're going to talk about. So they're going to give you a legal framework on how common hold would work, if it's possible to change a leasehold property to a common hold property, talking about new properties, how they would turn into common hold, and that's important as well. Here's another good one. This is another good one that's going to be in there. Capping ground rents for existing leases. Some of you that watch this have crazy high ground rents. I talked about one. It's a service charge, but there's a property in Hastings that's been for sale for about 10 years. It's a flat in Hastings. The service charge is £1,000 a month. Some ground rents are insane as well. £5,000, £10,000 annually. They had terms in there that they doubled every certain amount of years, which didn't seem like a big deal when you first get it, but over a few decades it gets quite scary, the number that you might actually be paying. So what they're talking about is capping the ground rent increase by £10 a year. That would be a very big win for a lot of you that watch this. This is another good one that they're putting in here as well. It's called abolishing forfeiture. So if you don't pay your ground rent, or you don't pay your service charge, or there's a small problem with your property, for example, I'll tell you a naughty little story that I did. I put a bedroom in a property without getting freeholder permission. I did it in the pandemic. I tried to get freeholder permission. I couldn't. So I just went ahead with it. And they weren't very happy with that. And they told me they were going to forfeit my property. Spoke to a solicitor. They said it's unlikely that that would happen. But technically, there was a risk of that. But if you don't pay certain charges, some leases would mean that you would lose your property, which is crazy. So it's going to be much harder to do that. They're not going to be able to do it for small little fees. And that's good as well. So that's important. So what else are they saying? That's pretty much it. So we're expecting a big update. So this is an update, just in case you think this is not an update. The update is that we're getting the leasehold and common hold draft by the end of this year. And I've just laid out to you there what it's going to include. It's going to include the marriage value stuff. It's going to include the leasehold extension costs. It's going to include capping ground rents. It's going to include abolishing forfeiture. Some big, big milestones there that lots of you have been waiting a long time to see. So this is a good update on this, and I think this is positive. It's moving in the right direction, and finally it's getting picked up, because we've had so many updates on the Renters' Rights Bill, weekly updates on the Renters' Rights Bill, sometimes 2 times, 3 times a week we had back in the late summer, and that leasehold reform stuff just got put on the back burner. Now it's coming back in, and we're going to see some movement this year. This is good. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and do make sure you grab our ebook while you're there, Mortgage Secrets. Nearly 3,000 people, I think 3,000 plus have got this now, which is crazy. This will help you get the best mortgage rate. It will also help you get off-market deals. You know, like we have Direct Line for car insurance and stuff like that. Well, for mortgages, there's loads of lenders like that as well. They're listed in here. It's in the description. It's in the first comment. Check that out. Do smash like. Give me that subscribe, guys. Let's get 50,000. And check out all the other content as well on the channel, including this video right here.